Nice. Let's get this mobile interface built. So we are going to get started with tablets, and we are going to aim for the section, the main wrapper of all of this, all of those items. I usually go from 80 to 40 on tablets. Of course, we're not having instructions from our designer on this example exercise. This is all a exercise for that I just came up from by using a Google interface. But let's imagine this is all our designer delivered to us. We're not having any sort of reference for mobile, so we're kind of improvising in here. And when improvising, I often go from 80 to 40 pixels for the margins for my section, for the right and the left. And in this exercise, I think I am going to do 70 pixels on the top, on the bottom, and the top. Now, for this top headline, I think I'm going to jump towards 32 pixels. I'm going to turn this to be 18 pixels for those two headlines over here, and this text over there, maybe we can just stay with 16. Yes, we can definitely do that. Now, for this one, I really like to have sort of consistency, so I'm going to do 16 for this one over there. Or maybe 40 will do better. There we are. Also, I'm going to get the space in between those two elements reduced. That will be the equivalent of reducing the space in between this element over here and this one over there. Right? So let's get this from 100 to 60 pixels, and yes, I believe that is just fine. Not bad for being improvising, actually, I think. So remember, for those who just landed on this video, on my previous video, I built from scratch all this interface for desktop, but we only took care for desktop in order to have the video not to get too large and boring. So on this video, what we're doing is building the mobile adaptation, the responsive adaptation. So please definitely check out the other video for building this interface on desktop if you want to know more about how this actually was created. Finally, I think I'm going to to change this 15 pixels to 10 pixels for the margin at the right and also at the bottom. Because of we had previously created on desktop a negative margin for the container or the wrapper for those buttons, we are going to modify those two accordingly. So we're going to have negative 10, and we're going to have negative 10 for the bottom as well. So that's pretty much it for tablets. Let's jump towards mobile landscape. And for mobile landscape, I'm going to stay with my 40 pixels on the left and the right, but I'm going to get this reduced to maybe 60 pixels on the top and the bottom margin. And also, I'm going to get rid of this column system like that. Now, notice that I'm having more space between the headline of this sub area and the buttons than the space that I'm having in between those two sub areas. This is not good because of the hierarchy should be indicating us that this is part of this group and those are two different groups. So what I'm going to do next is kind of reduce the distance in between those two elements in here like that. I'm going to have 15, and I'm going to add a little more distance in between those two groups like this. So I'm having maybe 25 pixels in between those two rows, or maybe 30 will be better. Perfect. know what is left. For me, I'm going to have this columns system to be 40%, just like that. Let me do this again. 40%. Perfect. There we are. And that's it. Let's finally go to my mobile portrait adaptation. And for this one, I'm going to have my panel reduced to 25 pixels at the right and left. Also, I'm going now to have this grid to become a one column grid. So I'm going to remove one of my columns. I'm going to reduce the one that I have with 40%. And what I have next is just a one column system. Now remember, guys, we're kind of improvising. Let's assume in this exercise that we were not delivered with instructions on what to do for mobile. So let's kind of get creative, get a little bit creative here. First, let's assume this size for this headline is just fine. I believe this is pretty readable for users. So let's, however, get this margin reduced to 40 pixels. The reason I'm reducing this is because of hierarchy. I'm having 60 pixels as the margins for this section. So it is kind of possibly expected that the margins in between the elements inside of the section to be smaller than the margins of the overall section, because it is inside. It should be a little less in order to properly communicate hierarchy. Now, for those of you who have not seen the how all this was created on desktop, we previously had those two buttons to be created inside of a wrap system, inside of a flex system, sorry, that is having this children wrap property. And the reason why is that we want that whenever there's enough spaces for those two buttons to be on the same row, they will be on the same row. However, if the space is reduced, here's what happens. And this is achieved via having this children wrap property setup. So for iPhone 8, for instance, here's how it will look like. And what we're going to do next is to have a little more separation in between those two elements in here. So I'm going to my top first area, and I'm going to have oh, I'm sorry, actually, because those two elements are inside of a grid system, I'm going to set my distance as a gap in between the grid system, and I'm going to have this to be 40 in columns. 40, I'm sorry, columns is actually not affecting anything. I'm having this to be 40 in rows. Now, why 40? Because we're having 40 in between here, and it kind of makes sense to have the very same distance in between those two groups of elements. Now, as for getting rid of this line, yes, I think it will do that. So I'm going to reduce my pattern to 0. I'm going to reduce my pattern for the top and bottom to 0 as well, and having my border deleted here. So there we are, and maybe we're going to reduce a little bit of margins in between those three elements in here, because on desktop it kind of makes sense the separation that they're having, but on mobile I believe that the users will be better to feel that those three elements are grouped one with each other. So I'm going to reduce this from 20 to maybe 15. Let's get this tried. 15, yes, 15 will do, I think. And we are almost there. I also want to have consistency and have the margin between those two elements, the separation between those two main elements, and the box top and box bottom, which on desktop are all of those elements in here, and this only text in there, to be 40. So I'm going to reduce this from 60 to 40 pixels, and we are done. That's pretty much it. Let's get this now tested. Let's hit the publish button. Let's open this on a new tab, and let's get the responsive design mode triggered. for us to check this out. So here's how it will look like on a very large screen. And let's get to see how it looks like for an iPad, for instance. Okay. It is kind of adapting pretty nicely, I think. iPhone Plus, an iPhone 8. And that's it. There we are.